tuning in online, and if you're excited to be part of our symposium, please drop off your favorite emojis in the chat and let us know how you're feeling and how excited you are, because of course our team can see you live. All right, so with that, again, ladies and gentlemen, again, we'd like to remind you to keep on posting and taking as many pictures or videos as you can, because later on, we will gift 3 lucky winners with a copy of Glenn Murcutt on Built Works, authored by Nick Sissons. Now, today, of course, we stand at a very unique crossroad where tradition meets innovation. Now, across ASEAN, we know that steel has become more than just building material. It represents strength, flexibility, and possibilities. It allows us to preserve heritage, to protect cultural identity, and at the same time, to push forward into a future-ready design that responds to climate challenges, to urban growth, to sustainability demands, and to technological transformations. Now, today, we will bring together a panel where they are visionary architects, engineers, technologists, leaders who are shaping and redefining the structural boundaries and integrating global learnings with strong local values. Of course, we're very excited to hear what they think about this innovation panel on steel, so we'd like to invite and welcome to the stage. Firstly, on the Session 1 ASEAN Architects panel discussion. With our honor, we'd like to welcome our moderator. Please come and join us to the stage. An award-winning Thai architect known for his sensitive approach to context-driven design, director of Enchant Atelier Thailand, architect Intanon Chantip. Good afternoon, Architect Intanon. We'll let you have your seat. And please welcome our speakers to come join our moderator today. Architect Kuntida Songkitipakte, co-founder and principal architect of Janchia Hung and Kuntida Songkitipakte, HIS Design and Research Thailand, which is a studio recognized internationally for its poetic, experimental, and climate-responsive designs across Asia. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Next up, we'd like to invite, we have technologist Leong Sai Ping, Head of Sustainability Unit at Gamuda Land. Now, technologist Sai Ping here leads the Sustainability Unit at Gamuda Land, one of Malaysia's most progressive developers, and he's known for shaping the company's low-carbon strategies and integrating resilient material use. Next up, we'd like to invite Architect Budi Pradono, Principal Architect of Budi Pradono Architects ANU from Indonesia. Selamat sore, welcome, good afternoon. Please come and join us. Now, Architect Budi Pradono here is one of Indonesia's most influential contemporary architects, and we'll see him talk more about his design later on and how it blends in together with resilient, innovative. Next up, we have Engineer Quang Do, co-founder and managing director of Green Viet Vietnam. Now he is a driving force behind Vietnam's green building movement. So with that, we have this amazing set of speakers, panelists. We bring together architects, technologists, and engineers up here on stage, ready to share with you their insights. So with that, to our moderator today, Architect Intanon, I give the stage to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Nice to see you guys again. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to welcome you all to the Session 1 ASEAN panel discussion under the theme Shaping Resilient Future, Heritage and Modernity in Steel Architectural Design. I'd like to begin with some short narrative about this kind of discussion with you guys. Well, although we have been living through a very tough time and uncertainty since the COVID-19 pandemic, within the globally fluctuating socio-economic landscape, the role of architecture and architects, even engineers and technologists, have remained constant. We have to shape the built environment in a good condition and to sustain good living qualities for people and for communities. But the question of good, of what defines good architecture, continues to challenge every generation, every one of us. But we can interpret the goodness in a different way, from different aspects. Like what? We can justify architecture through the lens of functional aspect, social aspect, and even academic and thoughtful concepts. But nowadays, public voices has come from diverse domains, amplified by digital culture and social media, that feedback the definition of good architecture and good built environment. Well, I'd like to begin with something that we have come here today all together, because now we have come to the conjunction between the globalized world and the idea of locality. Think about this. Dynamic exchange enrich creativities. It also challenges how we can keep our local identity and cultural essence. Whereas the global scene tends to discuss about the role of architecture and the role of our professionals. With this kind of rapid transformation, steel has emerged as a symbol of progress. And somehow it is a bridge between heritage and modernity. Well, how can ASEAN architects and technologists embrace global influences and preserve the local values, build a resilient, culturally grounded future? How? But that's the point we are here today. So I'd like to continue our discussion with 3 guiding questions before I hand down the stage to the panelists and continue to their presentations. Let's talk about 3 guiding questions. Question number 1. Think about local identity in a globalized world. Today, globalization environment where technologies, aesthetics continuously influence our practice. Well, how this would influence your work, your thoughts, and your attitude in your profession. Modern materials like steel is going to play some role. Question number 2. Once we discuss about steel, and steel as an essential language for modernity, how do you see steel enabling new approaches to your architecture? Through the looks of it, the performance of it, and its values, or I would say like continuously fluctuating values in steels. And the third question, which is the last one, architects, who's the shaper of resilient future? Because future is not going to be easy on us anymore. We have a lot of impacts around the world. Geopolitical impact, new technologies impact, economic impacts like inequalities, the high degree of inequalities, the high demand of architecture for residential and commercial projects, whereas the monetary system is changing and shifting strongly. With these three guiding questions, I know that you all have some thoughts through your presentations, and that is going to be something very fruitful for this discussion. So I'd like to hand down.
Like we live in Bangkok and Thailand. Actually, it's almost like in terms of Southeast Asia developing country, we most like see like something like that. And in terms of local identities, how we can find these things in a very concrete jungle in nowadays in the construction that always happen. So then we, in our house design and research, we do also a lot of research about our local context. And this is one of the research that we just found in our neighborhoods, that all the village people in our neighborhood, they use the steels as a fence, as highlighted in the red colors. And then we documented as a diagrammatic, see how the improvisation of this kind of material is used as term of like how local people apply this method by themselves without an architect design anything. So start from that, then we realize that can we imagine or define a new way how people really use, like especially Thai steels, in terms of shaping a resilient tropical futures, which is, this is probably should be how an architect should think about, not the local people think about. So then we start with some small exploration in our fence in that projects, and we kind of like trying to see the new possibility of the steels. This is a part of the steel pipe, and trying to use another texture of the soils. And then what we found is we redefining a new nature by using the steel, and even the animal, they cannot recognize this is the real soil or this is the steels. So if you see from the image, some snails, they come up in the verticals, they're not in the horizontals. So from this point, it's applied to a new project that we did for the fence of the same village in our research, and the fence it changed the way how the steel fence look like. It become a facade that creating a new space. And also in this project we call Same Artist Studio, that we really improvise the new nature. It's bring a new way of the new pattern of the green bamboo in this kind of fence limitation of the townhouse in Bangkok. So with this exploration, we also continue try to imagine a new way how the steel or metal that they can shape a new way, and even giving a new identities. In one of the projects we call Enjoy Snow Hotel in Bangkok, which is we use kind of like perforated steel panels and making a hole pattern, and also it's define a new name of the hotel as a snow pattern, and it's blurring between architecture and environment outside. Together with some interior project that we did for last year in ASEAN Architect Expo, we used the more limitation in between steel and aluminums that they combine to create a new way how imagine the nature evolving inside of the space, and it's become like a grotto inside of the space. And we also like playing a lot about how the steel and metal that can create a new wave that still respond to the nature, and also giving a new spirit. Like one project we did in China is called Intangible Sounds, that is playing with the sound of the sea, and is passed through by, actually it's imagine like how people see a new way of the sea beach in terms of the atmospheres. And we recently just still doing one project that I'm going to show next slide, which is should be really thank you for Mr. Yan and Buscope's team in Thailand that this is the construction photos. It's not finished yet, but it's gonna finish next 2 months. And this is the part of Buscope metal sheets that we try to make a new way how people imagine the roof, not a flat roof anymore, but the roof can bring a new shadow or bring a new way of the pattern that integrate the mountain together with the space inside. And yeah, so looking forward to the final in another 2 months. Another project that we also play a lot with the steels, also how we frame the views in terms of the residential projects that people can see too from outside and inside. And the steel actually giving a very good detailing, like you can see really thin frames that integrate to the buildings. And one of important projects that we have done in Thailand is called Museum of Modern Aluminum, that is combining between steel structures and aluminum profiles. And it's not only giving a new way how we see architecture and integrate the lighting inside, but it's also giving another exploration that how we imagine the nature as a resilient futures, and we define it as a new performance that it can really redefining a nature of materials and how it create a resilient topical future in our architectural designs. So I would address all the topic that we gonna talk today later, that in terms of being an architect and creating a new architectures that should located in another our cities as a concrete jungles, which is really lack of the open space or green area animals. So for me as design research, we think that resilient future is a part that how we respond to the nature in the new nature. That's we call the term that we call archinature. So our architecture designed by HAS. So we try to squeeze out the way that how materials, steels that can refining performance of the new nature in our city in this tropical climate. Yes, that's all from my part.
Thank you for thoughtful presentation. As you can see that has designed, has done a lot of reinterpretation of spatial enclosure, like applying steels in a different way and creating different shapes to create different atmosphere, working along with the climate, the sunlight, the breeze, and the nature itself. So, not to waste any more time, Mr. Budi, I'd like to give the stage to you and your presentation because I think that you have quite a lot to share with us. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, good afternoon. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Budi Pradono. I'm a lead of the architect firm called Budi Pradono Architect. It's a research-based firm from Jakarta. And I think this still architecture symposium, we try to understand what's happening and what I did along the way in my practice. So maybe I can show you. So I'm surprised that all of my project consists of steel, and I want to show several works, maybe only few. But I thought is that the modernities failed because they created a similar language. So this is one of my recent projects, 3.5 hours from Jakarta. And then I try to understand, try to listen the local architecture and try to interpret in the modern way. And of course, using steel as medium to translate the combination between the craftsmanship, the soil, and the concept of the local people in that area. So we can understand that steel is medium to create new architecture. So in the global era, I think it is very important for architects to bring the something important in each of the side, because each of the side has their own spirit that we have to dig and create new architecture from it.
Dan ini metodenya adalah dipadatkan.
With this intention, we can create new architecture. So in the way it will make the colorful, make the identity stronger. Another one is slanted house in Jakarta. It's made of steel, but it is a kind of critic to the society. So I try to listen what's going on in part of Jakarta called Pondok Indah. It is a middle class area, and then the successful people redefine their house with Doric columns, with something from the West. And then I introduce an antithesis by tilting the buildings upside down. So we use steel as a critic to the society. Not the matter, only a material, as a practical material, but also redefine the spirit of the place. So this is another one in Lombok, which I try to bring something new, something try to understand the beauty of the place and bring the steel as the glue to combine what the spirit of the place. This also in Jakarta, even everything made of steel, but actually the nature try to colonize the building, because we try to questioning the nature itself to ourselves. The post-pandemic architecture bring us to introduce something new, to introduce the new relationship between people and nature. This is the old Javanese house, wooden house, 90 years old. And then I have to rebuild it, bring the new spirit, and I need a glue. I use steel as a glue to combine, to bring this in the modern society. This is the latest one, which I can explore the steel in more dynamic way. So I understand that the steel, it can be something organic, something new. So this my last presentation, which is this is the new restaurant. Actually, they have existing restaurant, but I have to bring the new spirit for this restaurant, because during the pandemic, the restaurant is dying. Then actually I put a new direction, a new meaning. Structurally made of steel, but I also introduce steel. Bring the nature inside the building. So actually, it is very important for architects to ask themselves to bring something new beyond the materiality. And of course, the spirit of the place is very important. This I try to connect between city and nature, between Bogor, the city of Bogor and the mountain. With the connection, people can relate something new. So this is the existing building that we have to keep it, but I introduce the new direction to bring the new spirit, to bring new architecture. So we have to use the steel with the creative mind, that the locality, the local concept is very important. So our approach is always trying to understand the spirit of the place, to bring the new architecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in celebrating the richness of open-air lifestyle, Mr. Budi has shown us a lot the combination between the heaviness of traditional materials like wood, concrete, bricks, and stone, as opposed to the lightness of steel structure and steel paneling. You can see that the opaque material can come together with the lightness of steel and glass. This is very interesting. I'd like to pass on the next presentation to Mr. Kwon Do. Would you please introduce yourself a little bit? I know you have a lot to talk.
So good afternoon, all distinguished guests and all ASEAN friends. So my name is Kwon Do. I'm a co-founder and managing director of the Green Building Consultancy, company based in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. So my background is a civil and structural engineer, but then I turned my career path to sustainability. So what I'm going to share with you in a few minutes is not from the architecture's perspective, but more on the sustainability perspective itself. So I come very straightforward to the three questions that the moderator asked. So how we balance the global inspiration with the country's own cultural identity. So I will start with telling you something about Vietnam's history. 150 years ago, back when the French came to Vietnam to colonize, and they brought the concept of building the villas, very nice villas with the red tile roof. And at that time, Vietnamese still live in the, very simple, very low-income cottage. And we saw the red tile roof in the villas as the representative of the wealth or of the richness. So that image stays in our Vietnamese mind that we need to reach to the point that we own the house with the red tile rather than the cottage. And then when it came to maybe several decades ago, when the steel sheet the steel metal sheet became very popular, and then we need to make it, as you see on the right-hand side of the slice. We try to mimic, or we try to copy the red tile with the red color on the steel sheet. And three decades ago, the global warming was not there, so the steel sheet still worked. But right now, when the global warming came, and then with the very thin steel sheet, we could not survive with the red color, with the blue color, with a very low SRI index. So we have to change, and that gave us a lot of problems when we come with the big area of the roof. So the next slide, I will tell you the story how we overcome the challenge with one of the vocational school back maybe 12 years ago when we just entered into the consultancy career. And the head of the school at that time showed us the surrounding house with a very nice red tile or with the blue one. Yeah. And he rejected any color, any light color for the roof. And what we did to overcome that challenge, we have to do our homework to see who we talk to inspire the head of the school. And at that time, we found out that the technical head of the sponsor came from Germany. And he's the only one that we can talk to help him understand how beneficial that we have the light color on the roof. And then he talked to the head of the school, the principal of the school. And finally, we could not have the very light color, but the light blue color, the light green colors, as you can see on the right-hand side of the school. The next story I tell you is the factory. Yeah. The factory owned by the Chinese corporations. And the feng shui color of the owner is the red one. And he wants to put the red color roof on maybe for the whole roof. So what we need to do, he's the boss of the company, and nobody can persuade him to change the color. So we use the scientific result. We use all our soft skills, interpersonal skills, just to persuade him to minimize the red color on the roof by placing the red color on the wall and a little bit on the boundary of the factories, just to let him know that if you stand on the ground, you still see the red color, you still see your feng shui color, and he accepts. And that's what you see on the bird's view of the factory. The majority of the area is the light color, not the red color. So yes, that's how we overcome the challenge in terms of the persuading people to overcome the sustainability. So jump to the second questions. We share with you another story. Back to 100 years ago, Vietnamese women, we always wear the palm leaf conical hat, as you see in the slides. And around 10 years ago, one of our local architects, Vietnamese architect, was invited to design one of the traditional music theater in Mekong Delta in the southern area of Vietnam. And he came out with the idea to put the conical hat on the roof. And imagine, if we don't have the steel sheet, if we don't have the steel material, how can we cater? How can we afford to have the shape of the theater like this? And I show you on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, what do you see on the right-hand side of the roof? You see the dust there, right? The reason is they don't use the color bond. So if they use color bond, the dust will not be there. The reason why? The slope is very high, right? But the dust is still there. So one of the lessons is that if they use a very very good quality of the roofing material, and then it looks, the theater even looks better than this one. So how can Asian architects, I'm not architects, but I work very closely with the architects. So you see the reality with the expectations. On your left-hand side is the reality. The developer or the owner never give you enough money to spend. Normally, they give you just very low or appropriate costs to cater your material, right? And right now, you have to face with the climate change, with the urban change, with cultural transformation. It means you have a lot of constraints to come out with the expectation with the project. And the expectation include the aesthetic, include the meaningful, include the enduring, include sustainable, include resilient, include a lot of things. So you will be facing with the headache, right? So the key takeaways that I will share with you, and it's my last slides, is that the continuous learning and staying ahead of the curve will help you a lot in terms of telling the story, in terms of persuading the all stakeholders in the project, not only the client, but also all the stakeholders in the project. The second one will be the interpersonal skills. I believe that you guys, architects, have a lot of skills already, but the interpersonal skill I put on the right-hand side of the slides will help you a lot in terms of active listening, in terms of convincing, in terms of coming out with the very appropriate solution for the project. And last but not least, one of my recommendations is the regional collaboration like this. To be honest, I really appreciate the Symposium where the architects and industry professionals from all 4 countries come together. So seeing is believing, and I believe that we are very similar from each other in terms of the cultures, in terms of the climate. So whatever we see in Indonesia, whatever we see in different countries, I think the best practice could be very easily adopted in other countries. So I think the regional collaboration would be fostered. Maybe next year, Vietnam will take turn to hold this, or Thailand will take turn to hold this, and we will see each other again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwando. This is such a good example of how we have to find out the concept of optimization, how we should alternate building materials to achieve the goal for new requirements within the local context. So whatever it is, so let's continue to Mr. Leon, because he has a lot to share in terms of sustainability and climate responsiveness.
Thank you. Selamat siang. Well, in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? And so, my name is Leong, and I'm from Gamuda land. Unfortunately, we are not an Indonesian company. Many people confuse with the name Garuda, but actually Gamuda is actually, fun fact, it's actually a short form for Gabungan Pemuda, which is a coalition of young men, right? And so we are a property developer, and so jumping right into the question, I come from Malaysia. And Malaysia sits within a very, especially the built environment, sits within a very multicultural context. And being one of the larger developers in the country, a lot of our design considerations need to strike a balance between identity, cultural, comfort, as well as practicality. And so our design ethos has always been responsive architecture. And so being in a hot and humid climate such as Malaysia, a certain design elements such as your pitch roof, your large overhangs, even facade articulation that promotes daylighting and natural ventilation becomes unavoidable. And I guess these are the things that shape how Malaysian homes look But other than the climatic response, there's also contextual response. So one of our projects here, showcase here, ARIA, which is within a suburban context. This led us to be one of the earlier adopters of the A-frame concept, which, the look and feel is both modern. At the same time, it addresses that climate responsiveness. The meadow in Ho Chi Minh City is a different context, and so we use locally made clay bricks as well as vent blocks in the facade to showcase that, to express that local material identity, but at the same time still meeting contemporary design facade language, very suited for the Ho Chi Minh lifestyle. So I come from an era where I used to do project management, and back then when you build terraces, it used to be a copy, paste, and flip design. Very buildable, very efficient, but monotonous, right? But we have come a long way. Today we have the multi-facade approach. If you stare and look at the picture on the top left, if you stare long enough, I think you will begin to see alphabets. The first one looks like an A, there's an I, A-E-I-O-U, right? and since then, materials such as steel enables us to just push the design freedoms for the houses or homes that we build. And today, we have added another 2 more letters, which is the U and the N, right here. Right? It looks like a U and N. But this isn't built using steel. We have our own digital, next generation digital IBS capability. IBS stands for Industrialized Building System, where the entire building, including the facade, it's all built within a factory environment, very controlled, very precise. And the entire building, all the components are then brought to site, assembled just like Lego blocks, right? So where identity is already present, I guess steel is not as a tool for expression, but steel is used as a tool for continuity. And one example would be the 75 London Wall, which is our flagship adaptive reuse project in London, unfortunately not in ASEAN. But it retains 89% of the existing structural fabric, including key facade elements such as the stone walls, right? And this is one of the major refurbishments projects in London to date. Moving on, something closer to home, which is our Wetlands Arboretum Center. It is the first zero carbon building in Malaysia. Of course, since then we have won several other awards, including ASEAN Energy Awards, even certification by MGBC's carbon score, as well as Green RE. And this essentially is a living museum within the 90-acre site where we house more than 150,000 trees as part of our conservation efforts. But on top of that, we also conduct workshops, cultural workshops with the indigenous community. We call it the Orang Asli or the Orang Asal, where a lot of these workshops, these activities together with the community as well as kids is only made possible through materials such as steel. Look at the long span there. That gives us the ability to have that large space for activities to be conducted. You can see some cultural dances in one of the photos on the top right. I guess time is almost up, unfortunately. But I guess looking ahead, I see 3 responsibilities for ASEAN architects, which is to design for adaptability, meaning providing layouts that cater to multi-generational living, as well as changing lifestyles of the day-to-day household or community. Other than that, design that strengthens community resilience by encouraging interaction as well as well-being. And last but not least, design for climate responsiveness, which is to bring in nature, natural ventilation, daylight, and resource efficiency. Our answer to that is the latest typology called the clove, which showcases that architecture can be more than just flexibility, resilience, and design, climate responsive design that can cater to the next generational lifestyle. Okay, thanks. Right on time.
Okay. Because we are running out of time, but I'd like to conclude something, and this is very tangible for all of your presentation. We have moved on from something very conceptual to something very practical and something very visionary. I'd like to address here that the future ahead is not much about the characteristics of form making, but now and the future is going to be much about the characteristics of thinking process. Regardless, the result is going to be mundane or to be cliche, who cares? But right now, we have to be very responsible. We have to take care of the future, and we have to take care of the younger generation or the next generation to come. And steel is a part of that. It's going to play a big role for our professionals in terms of materials and in terms of new opportunities. Thank you. And I'd like to hand down the stage to you, Sarah.
Okay, so with that, let's give our speakers today and our moderator another big round of applause. Thank you so much for that very insightful discussion. Now I let you off and get back to your seats to enjoy the rest of the show. So that was it, ladies and gentlemen. We have as our moderator today, Architect Intanon. Thank you very much. And our speakers, Architect Kuntira. Thank you. We also have technologists, Leon Saiping, Architect Budi Pradono, and Engineer Kwang Do. Again, thank you so much for all of your expertise and your insights shared with us. So now we'll let you back to your seats. And with that, we're going to continue with the next part of the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from our speakers today that, again, architecture today is not only about constructing structures. It is about designing experience, about engineering resilience, and ensuring that our cities can stand the test of time, environmentally, socially, and culturally. And so with that, we also heard that collaboration is also a big part of this. It is truly very essential to gather together all the stakeholders. And all of our speakers today have also shared how steel can also strengthen sustainability, inspire creativity, and reduce the carbon footprints, and making this a more responsible way of us thinking about the future, of us thinking about the next generation. Build cities that are not only beautiful, but resilient and meaningful for our kids and grandkids later on. So, ladies and gentlemen, after following that very interesting panel discussion today and having our speakers share with us their gorgeous, beautiful, really strong projects, now we're about to continue with our next session. This is session 2. Now, session 2 today is representing the Glenmurcutt Architecture Foundation Australia. So with that, the presentation next will be delivered by the director and founder of Sissons Architect Australia. It is with our honor that we are joined here today by architect Nick Sissons. But before you come and join us on stage, I'd like to invite all of you to come see this video that we have prepared. So let's take a look.
Well, welcome to architects from Southeast Asia who have come here to this conference sponsored by BlueScope. I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful time with the speakers you have coming to be able to present their work to you. As you will know that much of my work involves the use of steel, and it has to be very carefully thought about how much one uses of these materials, because there's quite a solid energy-based cost to such a material. But used wisely in very small amounts and used structurally, there's no material like it. I learnt from a wonderful architect here in Australia, Col Madigan, on the DY library that he had done, the beautiful quality of steel in the finesse that one can achieve with it, that beautiful thinness and the tapering to the edges. It's a most wonderful material. And then when it's protected properly and painted beautifully, the material sings. It is so beautiful when used in a beautiful way. So steel is one of those materials that you can actually capitalize on and develop your work in a way that I see gives you the junction, potentially, of the poetic and the rational. I wish you all a very good period here in your receiving of information from your peers and others. Thank you for inviting me. I wish I could have been with you.
All right, so with that, let's put our hands together and welcome architect Nick Sissons. We give the stage to you.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here in Jakarta. What a wonderful opportunity to join you at this fabulous symposium. And I'm here on behalf of the Glenn Murcutt Architecture Foundation from Australia. Glenn Murcutt is Australia's most awarded architect. It's probably quite hard to see. Look at all that text there. That's all the awards that he's won over a 55-year career. He's won the Pritzker Prize, he's won the Alvar Aalto Medal, he has gold medals from the Royal Australian Institute of Architects, a gold medal from the Institute of American Architects, and many professorships around the world. But what's the most remarkable thing is that he's done all of this as a sole practitioner, working effectively by himself from his suburban house on the North Shore of Sydney. He's been able to create a career of remarkable work by doing that work himself, which is really based upon a values system. These are some of his notable works. I'm sure a lot of you will recognize it, particularly the architecture students in the room. They're all projects which are fairly modest in scale, primarily made from steel, glass, some timber. But what they all share in common is the fact that they are all a unique response to their particular site. So each building is a response and a result of the analysis that Glenn does for his projects, and each of them is responding to a number of things: the landscape, the outlook, the climate, the requirements of the brief. So every project that Glenn does is a bespoke building. And a lot of them use some of the advantages of steel in order to create nice spans, nice detailing. I was very lucky. At university, I had Glenn as my studio professor in third year at UTS. And he challenged us to design some little research huts for a coastal site in northern New South Wales. And I was a young, kind of naive student, but I jumped right into it and really enjoyed having him as a tutor. And it really changed the way that I designed, I guess, fundamentally, right up to this point in my career now. It just shifted my entire perception. After I finished at university, I wrote him a letter and said, "Look, Glenn, I'm graduated now. I'd be interested to know if you need an assistant on any of your projects that might be coming up." And I was expecting, no, I don't take on staff, I don't take on anyone. But I was pleasantly surprised to get a phone call back from Glenn saying, yes, actually, I've got to go and tutor over in Austin in Texas, and I've got a house down in Kangaroo Valley. Would you be able to do the tender and construction drawings for this particular house? And I was a fresh graduate. And this was just the most wonderful gift. So I had this opportunity to work on this project. I did all these drawings. What's funny is you'll see the writing here. I was so nervous about copying Glenn's beautiful handwriting that I thought I wasn't even going to try. So I wrote it all in Helvetica, printed it out on little stickers, and then stuck them on the drawings one by one. But anyway, it's neat and tidy. And then it went on to get constructed. And it's a beautiful steel-framed house. You can see here this lovely articulation of these steel components, and then the big oversailing roof, which really you can see it mirrors the sloping site, and it follows that down and captures all that lovely northern light on the northern side of the building, but then provides this really lovely sense of protection and weather protection. And across the top, there's this kind of sheet of glass. So about 20 years ago, there was this beautiful book that was produced by Françoise Fromeneau. And in this book, there were a couple of projects which I noticed hadn't been built, and there were just some plans in there. And I was fascinated to think, gosh, I wonder what this would have looked like. It was just a plan, not much else. And it kind of got stuck in my mind. And it was always something I was interested in. So, let's go back, sorry. So, fast forward to about 6 years ago, I'm at a function, and Glenn is there, and we caught up, we had a lovely conversation, and I asked him, are there any more books coming out about your work? And Glenn said, no, there's nothing I can think of at the moment. And then out of the blue, I said, wouldn't it be great to do a book all about your unbuilt projects? And Glenn thought about it, and he agreed. And so we said, well, why don't we do 10 of your projects? We'll recreate them on the computer, so we get all the original drawings. We recreated them in the computer using Revit. And then we created CGI views of each of those buildings as if they had been built and as if they'd been photographed. And then that formed the basis of the book. We chose the 10 projects. It included all of his original drawings, and then I interviewed him about each of the projects as well. And it was the most wonderful privilege to go through this process, and I learned an awful amount about what it takes to design a good building. So I'm going to share 3 of these buildings with you this afternoon. They all feature steel as a part of the way they've been constructed. And they've all got different kind of aspects to them, all which are fairly unique to each of their sites. The first one is a house in southern Queensland. Now, what's interesting about this, you can see that's the site location there. And there's this kind of creek or river that runs all the way through. It's the Nerang River. It's effectively a rainforest location here, and it's not dissimilar to much of the rainforest that you experience in Southeast Asia. It shares a lot of those kind of qualities. It's a very moist environment. There's lots of dense planting, things like mud. There's a lot of kind of mosquitoes, that kind of thing. But it's a really beautiful area. And so these were the original drawings that Glenn produced. And you can see it's a very simple little pavilion. All of his projects are hand-drawn, by the way. These are just wonderful drawings. But if you analyze the plan then, you can see down here that really it's a very simple kind of living pavilion. It's a pair of parallel walls, a lovely big sliding open door there, ventilated windows at either end with the 2 bedrooms, livings in the middle, then a services kind of spine through here which contains things like the joinery, the kitchen, and at the back here there's the little bathroom and the laundry and an entry and arrival space. If you then look at the elevations, one of the things that Glenn does very well is he creates a very strong sense of order using these horizontal lines through here. And that's really expressed, I guess, with the structure and the steelwork of the building. And that's particularly evident here in the elevations. Below that line, This is what Glenn talks about, it being an architecture of response. So he locates windows, doors, openings in relation to what the job of that particular thing has to do. If there's a view out that way, he'll kind of frame that view. If it's an entry point, it'll either be wide or narrow depending on its use. But then up above, you've got this lovely expressive steel roof up here, which is then supporting some timber rafters up in the roofscape. And that whole space along the top there becomes a clear glass clerestory to allow natural light deep into the floor plate. But what's really good is that the overhang here is angled perfectly so that it cuts out all of the summer sun, but it allows all of the winter sun into the house. And it performs the dual purpose of collecting water on this otherwise pretty remote site. You can see the water tanks are down through here, all these steel water tanks. And the reason that Glenn chose steel was because, again, of the location. It's a very moist site, it's very humid. And the concern was that by using timber as the primary structural system, that would start to warp and deform and potentially create problems with gaps opening up and so on and so forth. So the decision was made to use a steel frame. But it was done with great efficiency. And the idea was that that would form a very rigid framework which would avoid the house from creeping or moving or expanding or contracting. And that would give it some really great long-term resilience. But then the whole building on top of that was then clad in some lovely timber materials. And you can see here, these are some of the CGI views that we created. It's an absolutely beautiful facade, isn't it? It's got effectively simple kind of crinkly tin walls through here on either side. But then that rail which runs along the top, that steel rail there and one along the bottom, provides kind of the guidelines for these large, expansive glass sliding doors. And these doors are actually made up of 3 different layers. So the inside layer is insect mesh. The next layer is 2 sheets of kind of sliding glass doors. And then the outside layer, quite often, is the retractable external blinds, which can then get lifted up and down. Which means that you can start to tune up the building according to the time of the day, the time of the year, what the weather's doing. And in a sense, he describes it like it's like you're sailing a boat. You can kind of trim everything and make it work for you. So you can provide, as he calls it, that sense of prospect and refuge. And then on top of the building then, these beautiful hardwood timber rafters, which then kind of lean out over the landscape to form this really beautiful, sharp steel roof edge here with the corrugated iron. And at the ends, there's these lovely portals. This is the entry side of the building. And again, it's just really, really tough. It's very simple materials. And one of the things that Glenn quite often talks about is using simple materials, but using them really well. So there's nothing high-tech or expensive or remarkable about the materials that he uses. They're fairly simple, easily available, standard materials, but done with some great inventiveness. So again, it's just simple crinkly tin wall cladding. We've got the big water tanks here as well. But up at the top here, there is some simple plywood cladding above that edge there, and then simple hardwood beams and rafters. But it's a very kind of limited palette, but it works really well in concert with the steelwork. And at the ends where the bedrooms are, you can see it's got operable glass louvers, again for ventilation. And this is one of the great advantages that you have in Southeast Asia, is there's no requirement to heat a building. So insulation is of no concern, which means that you have the ability to let your buildings breathe. And it's something that we can only dream of in Australia. The legislation with our building codes are starting to make us close buildings up and seal buildings up as if they've been air-conditioned, which I think is a great shame. But the advantage that you've got in this climate is the fact that you can open things up when you want and you can close them down when you want as well. Natural ventilation, breeze, fresh air, all these wonderful advantages that you've got here, which really can be quite exploited in terms of your designs and the way you put buildings together. And these are some nice simple shots. This is the gutter, which actually goes beyond the house And there's this lovely kind of rounded edged trim. Again, it's just a simple dish gutter made out of standard steel profile, but it's sort of treated, refined, improved upon. Some nice interior shots then. This is all clad internally with hoop pine, some lovely flag halyard chairs through here, again to provide a sense of sort of ventilation for the human body. And in the heart of every house that Glenn does, there's typically a nice big bright red fireplace for those odd days, maybe 2 or 3 days of the year, when you want to heat your house up. And there's a lovely shot through the bedroom. And each partition then is kind of separated with these triangular pieces of glass. And that horizontal datum I spoke about runs all through the house as well. It's a very simple kind of way of controlling how things are set out and where things work to. And there's that lovely night shot. The second house is one on the Central Coast, which is just north of Sydney. This is a really interesting site. It's fairly open green pasture land, lots of horse studs and things around here. But the site itself was actually on the top of a little kind of hill. And so the design solution that Glenn came up with, you can see the top of the hill is here, was to wrap the building around the top of the hill. And it would have been, I guess, fairly kind of tempting to build on top of the hill. But actually, it's better off to build a few contours down and actually surround it down and around. And then take out this lovely long lap pool out. And if you look at the diagram again, it's effectively a series of these straight planes, which kind of this one responds in particular to a mountain, which is in the distance. And then these ones, that's kind of facing perfect east-west. And then the bedrooms here, which fan out on the edge, break away from the main building, which I think is in many ways is very similar to, and again, some of the students in the room might recognize these as Alvar Aalto buildings, which was one of Glenn's heroes, which fans out to create this lovely kind of built form and provide this sort of sense of generosity. It's also in many ways quite similar to Utzon's house, which is in Majorca, with the change in direction to pick up different views with these separate pavilions. Again, horizontally, the whole house is broken into these two kind of clean planes. The steel structures all through the main pavilion with the steel roof on top. But this section through here is actually rammed earth, which is a really beautiful material. You get the local dirt, local clay, and mix it with concrete, and it gets effectively rammed into these beautiful walls. And what that does is it brings the color of the local soil and the local area into the building to make the building feel like it sort of sits into its location and looks like it belongs. And so here are some of the shots that we produced. You can see this fantastic lap pool, which races out towards the peak of that mountain in the distance, and the way it wraps around the top through here. And these views through, the pool kind of erupts out. What's interesting though is the way that Glenn creates that kind of platform, that simple ground plane. The ground below it can drop and rise and fall as much as you want, but it maintains that planar level, which is a really effective way of dealing with some quite tricky topography. And here at the ends you can see with the bedrooms are all splaying out there with the individual children's rooms, and then the main living pavilion here with that lovely steelwork. And there's that lovely night shot. And the view from the front. And again, all of these are sliding glass doors. They all open up entirely or close down entirely. There are operable louvers which come down to provide privacy and some sun protection, particularly when it's quite glary, and insect mesh as well, and then a covered outdoor kind of porch space. And that's us standing there in the porch, looking that way. Very elegantly designed, very simple, and a really lovely use of steel, which really opens up, I think, the views and the aspect. And again, the nice red fireplace in the center, and the open plan living environment through here. Once all the doors are open, you can actually see the handrails remain. There's actually balustrades there, so once the slope opened up, there's still that safety rail. Again, just in a lovely piece of square steel, very simple. And a view back then through that main living space from the kitchen. And then that's the main bedroom at the far end. You can see that lovely rammed earth wall system, which kind of layers up. And this is Glenn's favorite shot, that shot across the pool. He loves water in his projects, absolutely loves it. But you can imagine being in there, can't you? It's a beautiful space, sort of swimming out towards that mountain. The last project that we're looking at is a community centre that was done in Lightning Ridge. Now, Lightning Ridge is in far north New South Wales. It's a very hot, dry, arid, almost desert-like environment. And that really necessitated an interesting design solution. The brief called for a community centre, which was office spaces, a cafe, meeting rooms, I think some childcare, an artist's little gallery through here and some other spaces, and an internal courtyard. So the diagram is very simple. Again, it's this kind of simple flow of elements which then break out and really respond to the uses and the views that are being kind of exploited. But what Glenn thought could be interesting is the idea of a building inside a building. And he was inspired by these beautiful shade structures which are in Bilpin, which is actually the apple growing district just north of Sydney, where there are acres and acres and acres of this beautiful stretched cloth over the top of these beautiful orchards. And he recently did around about, 4 or 5 years ago, this lovely pavilion which was in Melbourne, which was called the M Pavilion, for which he used a stretched cloth roof on top as well. So it's similar to that one. And these are some details from that project. So his original design then, you can see here, is a building inside here with its own roof, but then another building up and over the top, which is this steelwork structure. And then stretched across the top there is that open fabric weave. And the reason is so the building could be shaded before the sun actually hits the building by a separate structure. And it also meant that any rainwater that would come fairly infrequently during the year could get filtered through that and then collected on the roof and then collected into the tanks. And so in design developing this one, Glenn couldn't help himself. We actually developed all of the roof edges, despite the fact his original drawings didn't have them, but I think it made it a better project. So that was kind of fun. And here are some lovely shots then of that building. You can see that roof up and over. Solid roofs through here. Again, it's all really standard steelwork detailing, crinkly tin, standard steel profiles, but well considered and well built. And then the use of lovely vertical slatted screens to provide a sense of protection but ventilation as well. And then some of the views then into the main community spaces. This lovely central waterway through here with native plants in this grove of cedar trees with their lovely white flowers. And that's a nice articulation of the building inside the building. And then a lovely sequence of spaces according to the uses inside. Changes in ceiling heights, vaulted ceilings, low ceilings, stepping areas, a nice sense of progression as you walk through the building. But I just wanted to leave you with 3 quotes, which I think are really important, and particularly for any young designers in the room. And this is the key one. I'm interested to know what the site wants me to do and what the brief requires. It's not an architecture of imposition, but it's an architecture of responsiveness. And that's all about not imposing what you want to do for the building. It's actually understanding what the building wants to be. And that's a very different mindset. And he used to tell us when we were students, I'm not interested in what you want to do. I'm interested in knowing what the building wants to be. You must respond to the challenges and the issues. The second one is his often used quote, which is, my role is that of a discoverer, not an inventor and creator. We create nothing. Every solution exists. It's there to be discovered. And Glenn talks about it being drawn. You need to draw out the solution. That's why he's so keen on actually physically drawing. The idea of drawing out an idea, because the answer exists. You've just got to go and find it. You've just got to go and reveal it somewhere. There is a logical answer somewhere. And then this last one is lovely as well. So Glenn loves to live at the junction of the rational and the poetic. Not spectacular or novelty. He's never been interested in that. I'm interested in honesty and authenticity. So it's that moment, as he calls it, of reverie, when something comes together which is supremely functional but beautifully executed. And that's what really makes wonderful architecture. Thank you.
A big round of applause to architect Nick Sissons. Thank you so much for sharing us such a beautiful work, ladies and gentlemen. We had a pleasure of seeing and taking a peek about the Glenn Murcutt's unbuilt works and how beautiful it is, and blending all of the architecture with steel. And again, we also love to see all the quotes and how Glenn actually envisioned on how he was building, not as a creator, inventor, but then again to find the solutions and to be more responsive on what the site or what the place wanted to be, and to create solutions for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're about to continue with our next session, which is session 3. Now here at session 3, we're going to speak more about the role of coated steel in resilient design, where our focus now will shift from architectural philosophy to material performance. And now this session will also discuss on how protective technologies can enhance strength, efficiency, durability, and long-term environmental impact, supporting all of the architects in creating buildings that are both modern but also enduring. So please welcome to the stage. It is with our honor to welcome the Regional Innovation Manager of NS Blisco. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Umesh Mullik.
Hello. Thank you, Sasha. Good afternoon, everyone. Half an hour before I checked, we have approximately 700 participants on the line. So hi to them, and I'm following the footsteps of our friend from Gamuda. So starting my greetings with Salamat Sore to all the Samoa Orang. Okay. My name is Umesh Mullik, and I work in the capacity of Regional Innovation Manager at NS Blisco. Thank you for joining this particular session on the role of coated steel in resilient design, and I'm glad to contribute this discussion with my knowledge on coated steel. If you think of any building, basically roof and wall are the primary component of the building, and basically they primarily provide fundamental functions like providing protecting the lives of the individual staying inside the building, protecting their assets, giving them a status, and also ensuring their privacy. These needs are uniform across our region, but the challenges what architect face, they are not uniform. In today's era, architects face various challenges in selecting the construction material for the roof and wall. Flexibility to design the complex structure stand top of the list. I think we had a previous group discussion forum where I also heard team sharing about it is very difficult to form a structure if you don't have a right construction material. If you look at our conventional construction material like concrete, basically they restrict the design flexibility, and especially for the curved roof and extended eaves. Being a tropical region, most of our countries are exposed to high humidity, heavy rains, and the salt-driven winds, which really accelerate the corrosion. Corrosion is really one of the key design enemy, and architects are constantly looking for a material which can withstand the severe high humidity and the severe corrosion corrosion environment resulted from the marine influence and also the industrialization. Beyond corrosion, sustainability is one of the key driving factor in selection of the material. Green building certification is no more an option. It's essential gateway for leading projects in the commercial space. And architects are constantly balancing heat reflectivity, carbon emission, and the long-term durability of the products. Apart from this, most of the construction materials needs to be long-lasting. It should free of toxins, free of water leakages, low maintenance, fire resistance, and it should able to withstand in a climate like Indonesia. Speed of construction is also another pressing point for all the architects, purely because project owners are looking for accelerated timelines with a fewer delays. With all these challenges, architects have various options of construction material on their hand. Typically, conventional construction material like bricks, concrete and tile roof, they have served us pretty well over the years. but they lack in design flexibility and the speed. Contrary, on the other hand, steel as a construction material provides transformative benefits. It not only assists to create, not only enables the bold and complex structures, but also helps to reduce the structural cost as well as speed of construction. Steel, when used as the construction material, it really brings your design ideas into reality. It can help you to create elegant form, long span, hybrid structure, and also the design. Steel, when used as a roofing material, it also ensures that there is a low risk of water leakage. Typically, this low sound check. Hello. Typically, low water leakage property is very important in our tropical climate. Precise roll forming and engineered fastening system ensures water tightness. Beyond the water leakage, steel also have another advantage of being lighter in weight. So basically, it reduces the load on the structural frames and thereby potentially reducing cost of the project. Steel also been pre-engineered in the factories, cut to the length and enable installation of the larger panels, thereby assist increasing the overall construction speed and efficiency and reducing the overall project cost. Although you have seen on the previous slide the advantages of this steel, but selecting the right alloy coated steel plays very important role in determining how the building will age over the time. Typically, there are two types of galvanic coatings available in the market. The first one is a zinc-rich coating, which is known as Type Z, also known as galvanized coating, which is the combination of 99% zinc with some additive. And basically this, and it works on a principle of sacrificial protection. This provides baseline protection to our environment, but in a tropical environment, typically the zinc-rich coating doesn't fulfill the overall demand of the corrosion. Aluminum, on the other side of the scale, aluminum zinc type of coating, those are the relatively newer generation of the technologies. And they combine the best of aluminum and best of zinc together. Aluminum gives the barrier protection, whereas zinc gives the sacrificial protection. And this dual corrosion protection mechanism ensures that the corrosion performance of zinc aluminum steel is much superior than the galvanized steel. This is a real-world example, and basically you can see both set of panels were exposed in the same environment, severe corrosive environment in Australia. And after 12 years, I think the photo speaks for themselves. The galvanized steel, not only showing the red rust, the zinc has completely been consumed because of the sacrificial protection, but it also resulted into the perforation to the steel. In the same environment, zinc aluminum steel did continue to show the limited sign of corrosion. And this data point is really important for our tropical region because most of the Southeast Asian countries have a longer coastal line and it also has the tropical monsoon. Based on this particular exposure corrosion mass loss data and the industry-wide recognized testing, it can be concluded that zinc aluminum steel has approximately 4 times up to the 4-time lifetime compared to the galvanized steel. This slide again reinforced the similar durability gap. This particular project was installed with the galvanized steel and the zinc aluminum steel at the same time. And after 10 years of approximately exposure, you can see zinc aluminum steel already started giving the red rust compared to the zinc aluminum steel, which still look relatively newer. A bit clarification point on this particular slide, zinc aluminum steel is the BlueScope brand. Usually being a leading brand in aluminum zinc coating technology, zinc aluminum name has been used as a standard reference to a lot of aluminum zinc coating in the market, but they are not of the same quality. Apart from corrosion, the color fading is another area of concern for most of the architects, especially for the building aesthetic and the branding purpose. However, I wanted to take away one point from this particular slide that not all the pre-painted steel fade at the same rate, okay? Because these are two pre-painted steel, and I think one of the example given by our Greenwith colleague, where that hat-shaped structure showing the color fading and also dirt staining. So the point here is basically the galvanized steel, which is on the right hand side of this particular steel with the pre-painted polyester, once exposed to the accelerated outdoor testing on a hot rack, within the same period of time, it started showing the heavy signs of chalking and color fading. At the same time, color bond, you can see the pictures speak for themselves. At the same time, color bond, when it exposed at the similar condition, it maintained its original beauty. Initially, the two material may look identical, but once they are exposed to sunlight with harsh UV light, it will start deteriorating based on the type of polymer technology being used. Color bond steel is based on the zinc aluminum steel substrate. It's built on a zinc aluminum substrate and uses advanced paint technology, which is engineered for the tropical climate, thereby giving you the best color retention properties. This is another case studies from our Southeast Asian countries where maybe some of you can recognize this. This project was based in one of our Southeast Asian country where it started with color bond roofing system. So you can see in the background, there is a color bond roofing system, but halfway during the project, team has decided to go with the pre-painted galvanized type of steel. Fast forward 8 years down the line, this project is based in a rural, benign environment type of location. Fast forward 8 years, color bond in the background still continue to outperform, show the beauty of the colors which is selected initially. And the galvanized pre-painted steel, it started not only faded in color, but it also started showing the red rust, right? Typically, color bond steel is available in multiple functionalities. Thermatech, which is a solar reflective functionality, it reflects the infrared radiation in the solar from the sunlight, thereby giving you the cooler indoor temperature. Whereas clean technology, it is typically like self-cleaning type of mechanism, which cleans the dirt, tropical dirt sitting on the surface. The next generation color bond steel is embedded with Activate technology, and basically Activate technology is addition of magnesium into aluminum and zinc coating. Addition of magnesium into aluminum, zinc or zinc aluminum type of coating, it completely changes the microstructure of this particular coating, and right positioning of the magnesium compound determines, gives the superior corrosion resistance of that technology. To know more about this technology, please reach out to nearest NS BlueScope representative, and they will able to share more information on this part. This is my last slide. I just wanted to you guys to take away with this message that steel is not only a construction material, but it's really a design enabler. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Umesh Mulik, for that very insightful presentation. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we've just heard a comprehensive perspective on how this steel plays a really critical role in building resilience, and not only through protection and also durability, but also through efficiency and long-term sustainability. He also highlighted the real challenges faced by the architects today, from navigating performance requirements to selecting the right roof and wall materials that balances out aesthetics, function, but also the lifestyle value. Now, all through these challenges, ladies and gentlemen, we are reminded that steel offers remarkable versatility, enabling innovative forms, lighter structures, and modern architectural expressions without compromising either safety or also endurance. Now, of course, we'd like to thank you once again for that very valuable knowledge shared with us today. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we move on into the final keynote session of the afternoon. Moving on to session 4, presented by a distinguished Australian architect whose work explores the powerful relationship between culture, narrative, and place, with structuring place and culture. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please put our hands together as he walks up to the stage. Creative Director of COX Architecture Australia, Architect Steve Woodland. Very delighted to have you here join us today. Please.
much. Firstly, congratulations to NS BlueScope for hosting this symposium. I think it's incredibly important for all of us to be able to get together face to face for these kind of discussions. So thank you to BlueScope. I think it's a great initiative. Also, thank you to James Lee and his team for their hospitality. And thanks to all the previous speakers, including Nick, for his very elegant unfolding of buildings that we've not seen before. So I love that. Thank you, Nick. Before unpacking a few projects, I'd like to talk to sort of an underlying provocation which sits behind this cultural work and which I think underpins much of what we've been talking about today and the theme of this symposium. Creating authentic cultural vessels remains, I think, crucial to society's future resilience and well-being. Social cooperation has been a key to our humanity's survival since the arrival of sapiens, combined with the ability for collective imagination, largely via writing and language. Cultural storytelling has galvanised communities small and large in shaping their destiny. Storytelling allows us to aggregate our thoughts and beliefs through which our culture is formed. Our social and cultural constructs have never been as dramatically challenged as by the irrepressible undertow of technology that we all face today. And in the face of these many abstract changes to society, I think that the need for grounded, authentic storytelling is significantly heightened. Embracing that future demands that we have a firm grip on our cultural trajectory, that we must tell our stories from a clear understanding of our place, our culture, and our own circumstances. In the absence of our decisions, silent forces will mute these cultural narratives over time. And I think the arms race between artificial and real intelligence begs many questions and challenges. Restoring and reinforcing our own authenticity in our own places and cultures is vital. Cultural architecture can be an extraordinarily potent storytelling device as the physical vessel for culture. It can and should be, I think, embedded in an authentic narrative which is intimately connected to its unique situation. In the physical realm, we all have an enormous responsibility to honour these legacies. We pour vast amounts of steel and concrete into these vessels, and they potentially shape and reshape places and memories. Celebrating the place and memories adds gravitas to the meaning and worth of our cultural structures. And it's through this lens that I'd like to explore a few key cultural projects over some recent decades. The West Australian Maritime Museum is probably WA's focal building for the state's sort of ranging maritime stories. We have significant maritime stories, and it's located on the edge of our main working harbour within Fremantle. The setting itself is quite remarkable, quite a remarkable one. The building is perched on what was the original headland into the river and within metres of what was the place of first landing for the Swan River Colony in 1829. It's also been a place of significant man-made intervention. You can see in the underlay on the slide. In particular, C.Y. O'Connor's wonderful sweeping harbour. The design evolution of the building emerged from a fascinating array of influences, both uncovered and discovered as we progressed. As Western Australians, we are people immersed in a rich maritime heritage across diversity of cultures and geographies. And we are the custodians of a pretty vast and varied coastline and the keeper of a whole myriad of maritime tales. And it's through these that the building has been born. The project concept at its heart had a story of two things, the notion of a boat and a promontory. The architectural imagery of the Maritime Museum draws on the simple association of boat on the promontory, an image kind of widely held across different periods and regions and endeavours, and it carries the connotations of bliss of the Sunday sail on the Swan, or of endeavour in terms of stranded luggers in Broome, and reminders of risks in terms of the harsh realities of the many shipwrecks that dot our coastline. So the specific analogy is the clinkered hull of the first landing dinghy sent to this very promontory and pulled up on the sand. The first part of the story then is the promontory. Forest Landing is a site of enormous significance, as I've explained, but it was a promontory which had actually been lost. The new museum helped to re-symbolise the significance of that place, recreating the original sense of promontory which once existed. The project in that way kind of reclaims the meaning of the site and also opens up the promontory for public access. The geometry of the sort of gentle sweep of the harbour, which is C.Y. O'Connor's intervention for the main working harbour, along with the alignment of the slipways to the south, creates a powerful form that whose apex kind of points out through the heads to the Indian Ocean. The strategic positioning of the museum places it at the nexus of three distinct characters within the harbour: the ocean and river, the wharf, and the shipyard to the south. The second part of the story is the boat, the image of the clinkered hull on its side lying in the sand. This image drives the formal gestures of the building and is most strongly expressed in the bold, unique curved surfaces of the main roof and leisure gallery. And the overall silhouette then is one of the gunwale line gently rising from the stern in the east, leading to the apex over the water and concluding with the bow out to sea. The water side of the hull then generates a kind of soft, curvaceous building facing north into the harbour, and ever-changing in shape as you move around it, and leading out the west to the Indian Ocean. The deck side, which is the southern side, promotes a flatter, kind of more industrial skin to the building, where it acts as a unique backdrop to a whole range of industrial objects, such as the harbour cranes, the slipway machinery, the wharf sheds, and the Oberon submarine. So in contrast to that northern composition, the southern elevation promotes a much more layered visual experience through the wonderful filigree of the cranes, slipways, and submarine. The boat on the promontory is a story of land and sea and the transition from one to another, the concept of stepping on and stepping off. And this is a central theme in many of the museum's maritime tales. To that end, the design of the building expresses this transition by locating the entrance on the east, journeying out westward. The eastern half then is seated firmly on the land, and there's a distinct transition point out to the west where the building is perched out over the sea. Internally, the hull form creates a wonderful curved and sculptured volume. It houses the central leisure gallery, which runs pretty much right through the building, incorporating a diversity of major craft from early pearl lugging stories right through to Parry Endeavour and Australia too as one of the focal elements. The space has been structured as one would a boat in a way, with curved steel plate and timber frames to which a hull cladding is applied, thus revealing the shape. The structure is expressed within the space, giving a sense of being within, if you like, within a giant hull as the internal experience. And those internal experiences allow a multitude of vantage points to explore the objects. So at the lower level, one can experience the underside of the hulls and their workings, whilst at the upper level, the viewer can enjoy a deck level experience. Industrial steel armatures form supportive and immersive frameworks for exhibition pieces and viewing platforms. Again, a kind of legacy of the working harbour industrial experience. And the cultural experience extends the functionality of the building to be a very popular and unique celebrations and event space beyond its simple museum function. The western prow of the building forms an emblematic and sculptural terminus to the composition directly derived from maritime forms. And an upper level public terrace forms a beautiful place of outlook which is positioned pretty much exactly at the point of first landing, and it's a natural point of gravitation along the harbour's edge. So the entire composition looks out to the Indian Ocean beyond, and the museum sits amidst the theatre of the daily harbour of the daily theatre of the working harbour itself. And in a way, this becomes a living extension of the museum's stories itself, adding to its authenticity and its contribution to place a form of potent reference point for WA's maritime legacy. So we move to the Albany Theatre Project, which sits on Australia's southwestern coast. We won this commission via a national design competition, I think in around about 2008. The previous building was around about 2000. Albany in southwestern Australia is a regional town holding a very rich history where land and ocean and town and harbour come together to create one of the great natural harbours of the world, and as was identified very, very early in the piece. So the setting as a stage is extremely important to that southwestern region. The township is seated within its own amphitheatre of significant hill forms surrounding it, looking down onto the waterfront where the theatre sits. The interrelationship between land and sea is intrinsic to the composition of Albany, and the topography is what created the harbour. The building forms, if you like, a crucial nexus between that topography, between township and harbour, connecting the community to what was a lost waterfront. The project was conceived as a kind of fully rounded sculptural object whose forms were actually derived out of the crystalline molecular structures of the granite which surrounds the hills, surrounds the entire site. So the setting demanded, we believed, a building response that was able to be viewed from all dimensions, from above and below. So a series of folded, interlocking forms create the overall envelope. The crescendo of the form occurs over the flyer tower, which becomes the celebratory peak to that sculptural response. Connected triangulation provides a highly stable structural steel framework which perches delicately on the harbour's edge. And then the topographical silhouette is then echoed in the articulation and undulation of the building form. So the building's silhouette folds and moves to form highs and lows, reminiscent of the saddling hill form surrounding. I think the importance of the sculptural form is paramount to this location to enhance the shoreline vistas to and from the harbour. And in a way, roof and wall fuse into one. The planning assembly is the result of an integrated tripartite with the theatre itself at the heart, wrapped around by the front of house areas and sheltered by that triangulated folded envelope. And that folded form sits and lands gently on the wharf side in 4 points, at 4 points only. The centre forms a critical window to the harbour, so those foyer spaces all have visual engagement to the harbour, which is why we wrapped the foyer around. The public areas are highly transparent, promoting vistas out to the sea, but also back into the township. The form then generates a series of progressively increasing volumes from the west, and at its peak, the form houses the fly tower, which then reads as an integral part of the composition, rather than the traditional box-towered fly tower, which we were keen to avoid. So the theatre then creates a kind of jewel-like object placed in the heart of the harbour. It is, in a way, a piece of waterside sculpture, which is bred out of the crystalline molecular structures of the earth. The theatre itself is an international standard regional theatre which set new benchmarks, certainly for regional theatres in Western Australia. But importantly, it has brought significant new daily life to the foreshore, which had previously been separated, along with being a potential postcard experience for Albany. But it is a place for people on the waterfront which unlocks a lot of the rich history of the wharf. The building skin itself forms a critical element in that sculptural expression. Each of the cut faces of the crystalline form is clad in metal. That patinated metal responds to the natural palette of the surrounding grey granite hills and vegetation. So you get this beautiful silver greys of granite, and the building is seen as a part of that palette. And it responds quite sensitively to subtle changes in light, bringing the building to life throughout the day. The broad narrative of the AC is also extended through a range of commissioned public artworks by a sculptor, John Tarry. John worked very closely with us from the inception of the project, and his beautiful sculptural works add to the resonance and consistency of the storytelling and sense of place. The internal public spaces, as I said, wrap around the theatre, around the building's heart. The volumetrics of the spaces follow the folds and planes of that external shell. And the public spaces form, at all times, have kind of visual contact to the harbour, so there's a clear relationship to harbour and back up to the township. At the very heart of the composition, the main theatre adopts a more internalised, intimate demeanour. It is deliberately darker and lusher than the public areas, and it kind of cues a sense of focus and drama as you arrive. At the eastern end, the multifunction performance space enjoys its own separate and discrete identity with separate access as required. Its volume is created by a secondary wedge form which emerges outwards from the fly tower. At night, the building becomes a beacon of its own energy and vitality. The public foyer spaces become fully revealed. The activation within engages outwards to township and harbour. And it forges a myriad of pathways and accesses between township and harbour, both to the edge and to various landscaped arrival areas. And there's a raft of, externally, there's a raft of places and spaces for informal gathering and socialisation on the harbour's edge. As part of the overall harbour composition, it's an elegant and non-imposing piece. It's deliberately visible. It is a large building in the context, but it is a sculptural piece which is part of the undulating composition of the harbour, sitting in the mountain saddle. It re-engages the harbour and its connections to the township. And importantly, I think it's an authentically embedded cultural piece which is added to the sense of place and meaning for Albany's remarkable harbour. We now sort of travel sort of 8,500 kilometres or thereabouts to the northern hemisphere for a project in Oman. The Oman Across the Ages Museum is located a few hours out of Muscat near the historic township of Nizwa. By way of background, the project was won via an international design competition in 2015 and opened last year. And as with most projects of this scale and complexity, we had a very large crew helping to bring it to fruition, mostly based in our Perth studio, but also a team, an on-site team, right through construction. In a way, this is a very different circumstance to the and culture to the previous projects, but again, the ideation emerged from an intensively authentic response to place and culture. Discovering Oman and its extraordinary landscape and culture has been an extremely memorable experience. Our client, the Royal Court of Affairs for Oman, led by His Majesty, had provided a pretty highly informed brief which embodied some pretty clear aspirations for the Omani people. Our core ambition was to create a piece of architecture which was immersed in those fundamental stories of Oman, its history, its place, its circumstance. And distilling that down, there were two central forces of inspiration that sat behind our initial ideas: the landscape and the culture. Firstly, we found the Oman landscape to be incredibly potent. It's quite raw, but a very beautiful circumstance. In concert with that was the extraordinary history and culture of Oman and its people, and the coincidence of this incredible piece of geography and human achievements became central to the ideation. And providing a cultural touch point for Omani youth was a very passionate undercurrent, both from the client and ourselves, from the project's inception. As a personal creative journey, the museum has been a compelling and joyful experience. The people of Oman have been so welcoming and open to me over the last decade, basically. And there has been, out of that, a collective desire to create a contemporary narrative for the Omani soul, a place of pride and ownership by all Omanis, and in particular, as I mentioned, for the youth of Oman. The compositional outcome is a cocktail of that incredible human achievement alongside this compelling landscape. And I think there's an infinite source of inspiration in the flux between the intimate stories of people and the grand stories of their physical environment. The ideation for the architecture emerged seamlessly from those points of inspiration. It's forged from an abstraction of the very powerful fractal angular landscape forms which surround, and refined into a carefully crafted elegant structural outcome. The outcome, in a way, galvanises landscape and building as two quite potent compatriots. The drama of the landscape is, in turn, underpinned by the drama of the museum. The museum then exerts its own sense of place within the natural surroundings as an authentically derived sculptural and experiential form. And it has been, has a deliberately unique personality, is very much directly bred out of the earth of the site and of Amman. Volumetrically, the building literally emerges out of the earth, rising out of the land surface, and seeks at that point to create a blurring between natural surrounds and the physicality of the museum. So it is quite a unique partnership of people and nature, which is a significant undercurrent in, has been a significant undercurrent in Omani's life and history. The Al-Hajar Mountains form an incredible jagged silhouette as the immediate neighbour embracing the building and the site. And the composition is abstracted from those extraordinary forms and translated into this unique structure. So the building form grows up and out of the earth from the south, rising to its own mountainous peak at the northern end. The building itself is an embedded part of the storytelling, so it's not just an enclosure, but a storytelling vessel in its own right. And in this way, the core narratives of the museum are echoed and reinforced by the building. I think a successful museum is about an ensemble of storytelling where building, exhibition, and experiential qualities come together. And it's this complete ensemble which gives the museum its personality and potency. For me, as I mentioned, one of the wonderful characteristics of Amman is the fabulous sense of openness and welcome, both in its people and in its geography. And the building seeks to offer this broad gesture of welcome and generosity of arrival, which is an open invitation for all to join the museum. This invitation leads seamlessly into the Welcome Hall, which offers panoramic views to the surrounding mountains. The journeys are largely intuitive and offer a progression of narratives from prehistory through to current day. So the journeys are thus orchestrated but still retain a sense of spontaneity and variety. There's the ability for choice in the pace and degree of forensic undertaking, and most critically, there's a progression from openness to immersion. A core message within the museum is Amman's remarkable period of Renaissance, which commenced in the latter part of the last century. There's and continues to this day in effect, and there's a progressive volumetric rising which marks this moment in the journey. As a balance to the intensity of the immersive gallery experiences, the timeline gallery and reflection pool provide places and time to contemplate the stories that visitors have been immersed in, a gentle and quiet space of calm. At the very heart of the composition, the village oasis provides a strong community focus. It's a place that people come to repeatedly as a part of daily life. The village oasis forms a crucial hub to the museum's journeys, a place of intersecting pathways and of social gathering. The stunning natural light of Amman does create very much the essence of the building and how it's read in its experiential qualities, and bathed in natural light, the spaces and materials are brought to life. Throughout the museum, the horizon plays a constant role in the storytelling and placemaking. Reference to the horizon and to the external circumstance, visitors enjoy a high degree of legibility and wayfinding. It's a very intuitive and very clear device for orientation. The entire materiality and feel of the building is bred out of the earthen qualities of Amman. The geometry is extracted from the surrounding Al-Hajar Mountains. The fractal forms have been translated into the sculptural spirit of the building. The broad spatial arrangement is a sequential progression from south to north. The desert parasol provides the opening embrace into the museum, leading on to the Great Colonnade as the core axial gesture. The purity of the diamond geometry remains the informing planning structure across the entire composition, and that patterning forms a beautiful and elegant overlay and underpins the spatial assembly of the museum. And it's a patterning which operates at a variety of scales, from the macro structure down to the more intimate details. The earthen roofs rise up and over the gallery spaces to meet the Great Colonnade, and the timeline gallery then becomes an integral part of the linear museum narrative as a chronological spine. The diamond planform steel structure springs from that linear element, creating very significant spans of 60 and 90 metres over the exhibition spaces. And sitting under this spine is a very long thermal labyrinth with phase change material which pre-cools the air overnight. The concept of the social museum underpins the ambitions for a museum that is owned by its community. And I think the wider notion of the contemporary museum entails longitudinal engagement with learning, provocation and research. And this is a crucial element for engagement with Oman's youth. And to that end, the Learning Centre is very much focused on this vital dimension of the museum experience. The gallery experiences are predominantly and deliberately integrated and immersive, in contrast to the sweeping, generous open spaces. The journey into the galleries is focused, intensive and compelling. They're composed to deliver intuitive storytelling in a two-way dialogue with the visitor. And in some areas, they're deliberately visually compelling, allowing the storytelling to be told and absorbed by all ages. And layered storytelling remains kind of informative and accessible to all of those demographics. The museum is relatively low in terms of object count, and where the objects do occur, they're celebrated in a more forensic manner. And there are distinct shifts between the very tactile elements through to, if you like, the smooth tech elements that also exist as a part of the storytelling suite. Interestingly, the building itself and its design ideation became part of the exhibition narrative ultimately, unpacking in a way some of the stories I'm telling today as a part of the museum's own narrative. Outside of these primary gallery experiences, the museum domain is shaped by natural light. There's a contrast between introverted and extroverted experiences, which I think is a very powerful storytelling device. The desert parasol forms a generous hovering form of shelter which beckons visitors into the welcome hall. And the desert court adjacent provides the only coalescence of vehicular and pedestrian movement amidst a very abstracted, minimalist desert landscape. It's a non-constrained and visually inviting arrival under the cooling shade of the expansive hovering parasol. The overarching philosophy for the landscape was very much a light touch. The natural landscape, as I mentioned, is an extraordinary circumstance that we wanted to nurture rather than intervene with. To that end, the bulk of the site has been left in its raw form as a beautiful broad gesture. And as you move closer to the building, the more intimate spaces become slightly more manicured, creating a series of outdoor rooms and spaces. The entire building palette is drawn from authentic Omani materials. In particular, the composition is drawn from local Oman stones from various regions. These are very beautiful stones that are truly at one with the museum's locale. Copper is also synonymous with Oman and provides a rich counterpoint to the tactile qualities of the stone. The stone is exquisitely crafted and delicately patterned. A water narrative bookends the composition from arrival to contemplation. Water and its harnessing is the lifeblood of Oman, and the foliage lines which radiate out from the museum symbolise this importance. And a narrow water foliage also forms a hallmark adjacent to the main arrival, leading into the welcome hall. In contrast to the Renaissance Gallery, the Learning Centre rises gently upwards. Its apex hovers over the entry water body, and it forges its own magnificent undercroft space. It's a significant, memorable sculptural gesture that really symbolises the importance of learning and knowledge as an integral part of the museum, and occurs at the entry sequence. The beautiful longitudinal journey which runs through pretty much through the entire length of the museum is embraced by the great colonnade to the west. And it provides this wonderful, it's a bit hard to see in photographs, but there is this wonderful sense of distance, almost endless distance, leading to the external horizon, which beckons beyond. This experience then extends outwards into the landscape and to the mountains. There's this sort of great sense of generosity of place and openness. It's also quite chameleon-like under the influence of the ever-changing light conditions, and just as the mountains themselves change their mood quite dramatically throughout the day under the shifting sunlight, so the building kind of parallels these moods. The building adopts an overall premise that no light fixtures are visible in terms of artificial light. The light is visible, but the source is not. Into the evening, the building slowly comes alive with gentle and discreet lighting. The sort of elegant, rhythmic quality of the colonnade then becomes accentuated as night progresses, and in this way, the museum continues to shine its story from afar, well into the night. And indeed, it continues its community life well into the evening, well beyond the realm of the traditional museum. So to sort of circulate back to the essentials, I think this is very much a cultural storytelling museum. It's not a tourism device, and that storytelling is a continuum from architecture to exhibition. The natural circumstance is a powerful undercurrent in the forging of the architecture, as is the cultural richness of Oman. So if we arc back to the original provocation, I believe that creating authentic cultural vessels remains crucial to our societies, various societies' future resilience and well-being, particularly in the face of technological change that we see currently. We must, in that sense, I think, tell our stories from a clear understanding of place, culture and circumstance. Within that lens, cultural architecture can be an extraordinarily potent storytelling device. So for those of us involved in forging our physical realm, we have an enormous responsibility to shape and honour those legacies. And I think this can lead to outcomes which are owned and treasured by their communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Architect Steve Woodland, for such an enriching presentation. Please do remain on the stage and still stay together with us up here, if you don't mind, for the next session. But of course, as we have explored together how architecture becomes more than just structure, it actually becomes a vessel for culture, narrative, identity, and shaping spaces that carry meanings and emotional connections. Now, before we move on, of course, Architect Steve, please allow me, I'm just going to take a quick minute to bid farewell to all of our guests joining us online before we move on. So, ladies and gentlemen, joining us online from Indonesia, from Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, thank you so much for joining us today. And on behalf of ASA, EAE, PAM, UAH, Glenmarket, Architecture Foundation Australia, AustChamp Singapore, and BlueScope, thank you for spending your afternoon together with us. And we do hope that this symposium has inspired new ideas to all of you and fresh perspectives. So if you have enjoyed this sessions, please drop your favorite emojis in the live chat because we are seeing them. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next ASEAN Steel Architecture event. So from Jakarta, this is Sasha signing off. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye to you joining us online.